Okay, all right, here we go. Welcome to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Bruce McGowan, longtime sports radio personality. Today's show is going to be special because we have Dan Belluomini on, who is a former USF basketball coach and current TV basketball analyst. And at every commercial break, we're going to be asking a sports trivia question where we're going to give a vacation to the first three emails with the correct answer. Vacations are not sponsored by the radio station, but by Lighthouse Resort and Marina. And those vacations are free. Their only request is a $75 cleaning fee to cover the housekeeping expenses. Check them out at lighthouseresortandmarina.com. And you can listen to Sports Econ 101 on iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Sports Byline USA, CRN, and many other terrestrial stations. And because we had last week, it was so much fun with basketball and presidents. We're doing basketball and presidents part 2.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good? Okay. So when we come back with Dan, we're going to get into all the March Madness, all various basketball things. I want to ask some of the business questions, like some of the basketball teams don't even want to get into the Sweet 16, so to speak, because of how expensive it gets, and they're smaller. Smaller markets. And if we have some time left over, we'll talk a little bit about USC receiver suing over an insurance policy, and Kyrie Irving has got an incentive clause. That would be kind of interesting. The Trail Blazers, I don't know if you saw that, they copied the Warriors logo. Shirts.
They ripped off the Warriors. Rip City. That's what they call it. That's what they call it up in Portland. Rip City.
Probably specifically because of
that's right. That's right.
And,
I got to tell you a little story about Rip City when we get back into it because it's kind of a fun story. Dan probably knows this one too.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
and then there's also some rule changes proposed for basketball. I got an article about that. I thought it'd be kind of fun. And good old Jim Harbaugh says that he doesn't think he's worth the money he's getting paid.
Whoa!
But I don't know if he's going to give it back.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding over 8% secured by real estate. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Stay with us. We'll be back, and we're going to have our guest, Dan Belluomini, on. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yeah, you're close.
Okay.
I remember once when I was up in Seattle, I was covering a game, and Dan came on and was doing, I remember I was sitting in press row, and there was I don't know if you remember this, Dan, but there was a guy who was doing the Seattle Chieftains, and they were playing you guys, USF, at the old, one of the, I think it was the Civic Center in Seattle. And this guy named Cliff Zahner, he's an old-time sportscaster, and he goes, "We're talking to Dan Belluomini." And Dan goes, "No, it's actually Belluomini." "Oh, Dan Belluomini." And Dan says, "No, it's actually Belluomini." And then Cliff butchered the third time, and Dan said, "You want to do this some other time?" You remember that one, Dan?
Yeah, I do, kind of.
Yeah. That's funny. That poor guy. I felt so badly for him because he just couldn't get your name pronounced. And that's an Italian name, isn't it?
He's not alone.
Yeah. It's the L's are silent though, which is kind of or they're actually like a W, aren't they? Is that part of the
It's like Belluomini.
Belluomini? It's an Italian name, right?
Yes, it's
Okay. What part of Italy is your family from?
Northern Italy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Northern Italy. Up by Pisa, actually.
Oh, cool.
My business partner, his family comes from Chiave.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was born here, but I've been back here.
Okay.
Oh, it's a great place.
Oh, yeah. Actually, we're going to be going back to Italy in June, July.
There you go.
Okay, you guys ready? Here we go.
All right.
Yeah, we'll get you. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Bruce, why don't you introduce our guest?
Yeah, Dan Belluomini, of course, was a very successful coach at USF, and he's really found a great career after coaching as a TV analyst for many, many years here on the West Coast. I think a lot of our listeners who are listening in the left coast, we'd like to call it, are familiar with Dan's work. Dan covers a lot of Pac-12, a lot of the other smaller schools. And Dan, I got to ask you about March Madness. This always is kind of fun. That the thing that intrigues me most about it is that you have some upsets, and it's also everybody goes in a sense in a kind of an equal footing, because if you're knocked out, if you're beaten just one time, your season is done. That's kind of exciting. How many other sports have that?
Yeah, there's really nothing like it. That's why the tournament frankly, is so successful. You know, it's got kind of a one and out deal. And yeah, there's been some exciting games, but it seems like kind of the cream is rising right now. If you look at who's left 16, around at 16, and there's some really good teams. There's not many that have evolved from a low seed, except for UCLA. It was like UCLA was an 11th seed, and they did a good job. They play Gonzaga tomorrow, so that's pardon me, on Friday.
You think?
I kind of think it's the tournament's great. I know your show is Sports Econ. One of my big things is I think college basketball, particularly during the regular year, has kind of lost a little bit in terms of attendance. And I don't think they have any problem at the major schools, the top 30 or 40 schools in the country. They get the fans support and everything goes well. But I'm a little concerned with the rest of the schools. I don't see anybody really packing them in as much as they used to in the past. Obviously, when the tournament comes, everybody's really excited, and they should be, and there's no issue with attendance. But when you look at kind of the normal year, I saw kind of a dwindling in attendance. So I kind of think, college basketball has got to take a hard look at that, maybe think of some rule changes, think of some things that make the game a little bit more exciting. So,
Yeah, what do you think?
I've been around it a long time, and I know the West Coast is not as rabid as the Midwest, but I'm kind of hoping that we'll take a look at that and try to get the students out, the fans out, and try to support college basketball better than it's been supported during the regular year. Anyway, that's one of my little things.
Well, Dan, what do you think? What do you think the reason is? I mean, because they still have some pretty good superstars coming out.
Yeah. No, and Edward, I don't think we're not talking about UCLA, Kentucky, Gonzaga. Even I've done quite a few games in Colorado. Colorado, University of Colorado packs them in for the game. They're kind of the only show in town that got a pretty good game. But I'm talking about big level majors that you can look around. I think there's over 200 and some teams. Take a look at the teams from 15 to 200, and I would bet if you go to a game, and I would bet sometimes there's only 1,500 people there. So to answer your question, I really think that people want excitement. I think they have to look at maybe different rule changes. I'd like to see the shot clock reduced from 35 seconds to 24. I really would. I can't tell you how, to me, how discouraging it is to go to a basketball game. The final score is 49 to 43, and we're playing with a 35-second shot clock. It doesn't make any sense.
And they did move the moved the 3-point line back a little bit. Yeah, they did move the 3-point line back a little bit.
The 3-point line is fine. I mean, I think that line is exciting. I think it's an easy shot for guys, but I would want to change that.
Okay.
I just think the game has to be up and down a little bit more than it is. I know not everybody agrees with me.
No, I totally agree. I like the 24 seconds.
90 to 80 game and a 50 to 40 game.
Yeah.
No question. Hey, I got to ask you about Wichita State. To me, they were one of the most intriguing teams. I think wasn't it a year ago they went into the tournament undefeated, and then they were upset, and then now this year they win a big game over Kansas. And you look at their lineup. I guess, Dan, the Shockers didn't recruit any really top-level high school recruits. As a matter of fact, on Rivals.com, they didn't have a single player who was ranked among the top 100. So how does this team of underachieving unknowns, have such a successful rate on the court?
Yeah, you're right, Bruce. They were undefeated and went to the Final Four.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. They were that was a great story last year.
Yeah, to answer your question, you've got guys like Lee, Baker, that have been with them for 4 years. So their model is similar to the Virginia model. And if you look at Virginia also, now they've lost, earlier in the tournament that they would like. But they really didn't have any McDonald's All-Americans. But, you look at Wichita State, they're probably not going to get in. So their program is to develop players, get good players, keep them for 4 years, and by the time you're a little bit older, you certainly have an opportunity to compete with others. And, they were fortunate. They probably had a few guys, that overachieved, and now they started winning, and they do support their basketball very well at Wichita State. Had a great win over Kansas. Kansas will not schedule them. They won't play each other. Kansas feels they have everything to lose and nothing to gain by playing Wichita State, and they're no more than a couple of hour and a half apart from each other. because they want a little revenge factor. So everybody has different models and different ways of achieving success, and I think that's just a great story. They have really developed and played well, and they've been fortunate. Now, after this year, they do lose Van Fleet, they do lose Baker. They're going to lose some guys. So whether they can keep it going or not, remains to be seen. Similar to what Gonzaga did many years ago. Gonzaga did the same thing. Now they've got the reputation of getting players, and they've done a good job of recruiting. Now their recruiting has really enhanced because of all their success. So
I think
it's a long time.
I think it's great for the sport when you have. I mean, it's kind of fun to see Duke, Kentucky, etc. But I just love seeing George Mason or Butler or some of the Wichita State, the ones that you just aren't expecting. I think it's just great for the sport.
Yeah, we had Florida Gulf Coast.
Oh yeah.
Run a couple of years ago. So you're right. I think that's the beauty of the tournament. That's why everybody loves the NCAA tournament, because they all point to the underdog, the George Masons of the world, to get to the Final Four. And now George Mason couldn't keep it going after their coach went to Miami. They just fired their coach 3 or 4 years later. I mean, it's difficult to keep that going.
Hey, I got to ask you about some personalities because I've always enjoyed one of the things about college basketball that's maybe a little different than the pros. High-profile coaches in the NBA get enough publicity, but it's usually the spotlight is on the players. In college, because these guys are around, the good ones are around for so long, they become almost the face of the school. And I'm thinking of a guy like Tom Izzo or somebody like Rick Pitino. And these two guys, as an example, they have been so successful in the tournaments year after year after year. I mean, Izzo has taken his team to the Final Four 5 times. Pitino has taken 3 schools to the Final Four a total of 7 times. Is there something, Dan, about being a tournament coach? Some guys just rise to a higher level when you get into the postseason and are just naturally more effective in that role?
Well, I think both of you mentioned 2 great coaches that have had a lot of success. Even take away the tournament, they've had a lot of success through their career and have the ability to recruit top-level players. Draymond Green is a perfect example of playing with the Warriors, was an outstanding player at Michigan State. But Tom Izzo has done teams to get his group to rise to the occasion even more so when they get to the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's incredible how well they played in the NCAA tournament. And this year's a perfect example. I underestimated Michigan State this year. I really didn't think they'd beat Virginia, even though they beat them last year. But lo and behold, there they come, and they do it again. They play good defense. They're not as talented this year as they've been in the past.
Okay, hey Dan, stay with us. We're going to cut to a Dan. Stay with us. We're going to cut to a quick commercial break here. Okay, talking about presidents and baseball. Who was the first president to dedicate a major league ballpark? All right, the first 3 emails with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email edward@sportsecon101.com the answer to this question. Who was the first president to dedicate a major league ballpark? All right, don't touch that dial. Stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. We've got Dan Belluomini on the phone to talk about the NCAA tournament.
Okay. I'm trying to think who that would be. You got any ideas on that one, Dan? I'm trying to think. It'd have to be somebody like, I don't know, Teddy Roosevelt or
I have no idea. I was going to say Truman.
Yeah, I think it's going back, maybe back in the.
Maybe back even further.
Yeah, back in the 20s or something.
I have no idea.
Before our time. I just was realizing my dad was born in 1920, and.
Dedicate a major league baseball stadium.
Yeah, so I mean, there were a lot of stadiums built in the teens and 20s, and I'm trying to think.
Maybe Woodrow Wilson.
That's right. I was thinking, 1920. I'm going to say Woodrow Wilson.
Yankee Stadium. No.
Yeah. Sad thing about Woodrow Wilson. Here's a little interesting trivia thing. He would have been considered one of the great presidents of all time, but he turned back the clock on civil rights. He was a vicious racist.
Really?
Yeah, vicious racist.
Oh.
He really was. It's a terrible story.
Read, the stuff on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting guy, though.
All right, here we go. Well, welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Edward Brown and Bruce McGowan here. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question about baseball and presidents. Who was the first president to dedicate a major league ballpark?
I'm going to guess, going way back, somebody like Woodrow Wilson, maybe before the 1920s.
And which ballpark would you have thought?
BC State or Griffith Park.
Actually, it wasn't that long ago. Lyndon Johnson, the astronaut.
Oh, the astronaut, of course. Yeah, I remember that. That's a good one though. That's one that's going to catch you off guard.
All right, so we have on the phone Dan Belluomini, who is the former USF basketball coach and current television basketball analyst. We're talking about specifically the NCAA tournament. One of the questions I was going to ask you, Dan, is I wonder how much, going back to what we were talking about before we cut out to the break, Bruce was asking specifically about certain coaches and how well they've done. I wonder how much of the players basically are saying, listen, I'm playing for Rick Pitino. I mean, I can't let him down. This is why we came here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that too, because I think when you talk about Tom Izzo, Rick Pitino, you talk about the top-notch coaches in the country, and they're recruiting to win a national championship. That's how they recruit. Now, obviously, it's not going to happen all the time, but that's their tenor when they go in to talk to these players when they're in high school, and they're all living by the same rules now. And Don Calipari made a pretty good statement. I thought when he was being interviewed, he goes, I didn't make the rules. I don't like this one. The players can leave after 1 year, but don't blame me for going out and getting the best players that I can in order to put together a super team to see if we can win a national championship. So,
sure.
You're under all those guidelines, and I think players rise to the occasion, and they seem to kick it into another notch when they get into the NCAA tournament. I mean, they know how important it is, and you're just talking about two great coaches there. So, and they're both still alive. Not the, and I don't think Louisville is Louisville that we know a couple of years ago, but they're really a tough out, and so is Michigan State.
Yeah, you mentioned Pitino though. It's intriguing to me. You mentioned his team. Louisville has not been the kind of a team that they were. Just a dominant team. They came into this tournament a 4th seed, but they really took apart. I guess it was Northern Iowa the other day, and it looks like they may be. They lost one of their best players. I guess the coach kicked Chris Jones off the team, and I'm not sure what was that a discipline problem? Was he just?
I believe it was.
Yeah.
It was undisclosed, but he's not going to kick him off at this time.
Yeah.
Not a discipline problem. So, and then don't forget, Bruce Louisville had all they wanted was UC Irvine.
Yeah.
Irvine did a heck of a game with Amadou Ndiaye, their 7'6" center, who is, he's a load. I mean, he's still learning basketball. He's only a sophomore, but he's a guy that changes the game. I mean, there's no doubt about it. When you're 7'6" and you have some agility, you will affect the game. And Louisville was fortunate to beat UC Irvine.
So, Dan, for some of these smaller schools, because I don't know, what do we figure it costs like $1 million to send the students, basically play in the tournament? At what point? I mean, are there any schools that really are like almost hoping they don't get in?
Edward, again, the question is.
Well, and thinking about some of the smaller schools where it's a huge hit on their budget to actually, in theory, you would think. They all want to go to the tournament. All go to the dance.
Yeah, the advantage of having that publicity is something you can't quantify in terms of dollars and cents. I can't believe they're actually.
The schools that are in the tournament or the schools that have not done.
No, he's talking about the ones that went and whether or not in a sort of weird way, some of the athletic departments might say, "Geez, this is costing us a lot of money." I'm not so sure.
And we really didn't have a chance.
Not really, because back in the day, I can vividly remember that when you were coaching. You did get into the NCAA tournament, the payday was pretty good. In other words, each school and now each conference will get quite a bit of money that will be distributed back to the schools, and much of the travel, much of the expense of going to the tournament will be taken care of. So
that's good.
To me, it's all gravy if you're in the tournament. You will make money. You will, the school will be happy. And the further you go, the more you advance, the more money that's out there because you're playing before, bigger gates and more games. So that's how it's all distributed now. So
I wonder if some of the
it's distributed direct to the conferences, and then the conference, depending on how, like the Pac-12, for example.
Well, with all
one of these schools alive, so they're going to be rewarded financially, and then they'll distribute it back to the school.
But with all the stuff going on with Ed O'Bannon, I wonder if some of the students are going to say, "Hey, come on, slide some of that money over to us." If that's going to try for that.
That's another point. That's the courts have to discuss. So I think the NCAA might be careful right now using the likeness of players, commercials or another. because of the advantage situation.
Yeah. Dan Belluomini is joining us, former USF coach and longtime television analyst. Getting back to coaches, one of the guys that always intrigues me is Mark Few here on the West Coast with Gonzaga. Small school has been very successful. He hasn't been able to get past the Sweet 16, but this guy has the highest winning percentage of any active Division I coach. Is this the year? And now they got to play UCLA, which is kind of an intriguing matchup. Is this the year you think they finally make it to the Final Four?
Well, they've got a great shot. If you look at Gonzaga, the only issue is that they would have to get by UCLA and most likely Duke. You know, Duke, Utah is going to be a good game. I don't know if Utah has enough to beat Duke because Duke has Okafor in there who's unbelievable. Although Utah's a good basketball team. I think UCLA will give Gonzaga all they want. Gonzaga beat them earlier in Pauley, but the Bruins are playing better basketball now, and they're getting good. They're playing a little bit more as a team, and they're getting better shooting. So I think that will be a terrific game. Gonzaga's had an unbelievable run under Mark Few. He has recruited internationally better than almost anybody in the country. You know, with Sabonis and Karnowski, who's from Poland. Angos is from Canada. I mean, he's got guys from all over the world, which he is smart. He's going after, you know, players that he knows it's difficult to go to LA and Chicago and New York to get players. So you have to find a way to replenish your team, and he's been able to do that. So, yeah, he's really done a great job of recruiting, and they're going to be good for many years to come because Karnowski will be back, Sabonis will be back. Bruce, you probably remember his father.
Yeah.
He did Trailblazers.
Yeah.
Was a great player, and now kind of runs much of the European youth basketball.
Wow. That's interesting.
You know, I'll give you a sideline on Sabonis real fast. He was offered $250,000 to play for his club team, and his older brother talked him into playing college basketball. Said, no, don't take it. The family is well off. The family in Europe is well off, and they really don't need the money. And he said, no, go play college basketball. I didn't do it, and I think you would benefit from it. You'll enjoy it. The club, European, the money will be there at the end. And he's a guy that came in with one of the field goal percentage shooters in the nation, 6'10.5", 6'11". He's a terrific player. So
can't beat the education either.
He's done a great job.
Hey, I got to ask you, Dan, you coached, and this is going back a number of years, but I remember, again, we're talking locally here. Dan was coaching at USF, and USF had some great teams in the late 70s, early 80s, and you were coaching a few of those. And then the program ran into some problems. This was, I believe, after you were there with the Quentin Daly situation, and Father LeChavo, who was the president of the university at that time, did an unprecedented thing, which was to shut down the basketball program. I never have seen that actually happen, and it may have happened before.
What was the reason?
Because of all the problems with Quentin Daly, and there were some other indiscretions. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit how that affected USF, because they've come back and had a program the last 20-some-odd years, but it just has never even come close to the cachet that you guys had back in the day when Quentin Daly and people like Winfred Boyce.
Recruiting has changed so much now.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, you didn't have national television.
Yeah.
So as soon as you had national television of games, and parents in Los Angeles could watch their son play on let's say ESPN at 6 o'clock at night, even though they were playing in New York, that changed the landscape. So that really did. So I kind of think the model now is as basketball has evolved and it's become such an international game that now you almost, unless you're one of the top recruiting schools in the country, which there's not many of those, you're not going to be competing in UCLA and Kentucky and Duke and all of North Carolina to get players. I think you have to be more of an international-based recruiting. For example, like St. Mary's has done. They've done a great job of recruiting Australia. They found a niche there. They started it many years ago. They're continually getting, because now they've got a pipeline.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of a different situation that you have to adapt to, Bruce. So it's completely different than it was. It's just not the same game.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's changed quite a bit from the old days of everything being the United States.
Yeah, no question about it. Hey, I got to ask you about this tournament too, because as we speak, the Sweet 16 is coming up, and I've been lucky enough, as you have, to have attended a lot of these things over the years. And the wonderful thing, as we alluded to earlier, are the possibility of these amazing upsets and great finishes. And to me, when you see one of those kind of games, it just crystallizes everything that is good about college hoops. And there is something kind of different about college basketball. And I know that those of people like yourself who have always been drawn to it, who've been a part of it, it's one of the big reasons why you like to be around it is when you get to this point of the season.
Yeah, Dan, before you answer that, okay. We're going to we have to cut to a station break. When we come back, Dan Belluomini is going to answer that question, all right? Here is our second commercial break trivia question, baseball and presidents. Who was the first president to invite a team to the White House? And it was not Barack Obama, okay? All right, the first 3 emails with the correct answer went a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. This one's actually kind of a little harder than the average one.
I think I know the answer.
Okay, so who was the first president to invite a team to the White House? Stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. We are talking the NCAA basketball tournament. March Madness is here. Okay.
All right.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a 12:30
Okay.
radio deal that I got it too.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so if we could, maybe just have you answer the question, then we'll say goodbye to you. How's that?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Dan.
Oh, that's okay.
No.
We appreciate you being
all
on
the time.
as long as you have.
All right, let me just save the
Can you
file
believe this
here.
weather, Dan? God, this is amazing. Can you believe how nice the weather is today?
Oh, yeah.
God, I wish I was out, playing golf or
I
something.
know, I'm going to ride the motorcycle across the bridge. I've never gone across the Golden Gate Bridge on a scooter.
Oh, you got to do it.
You betcha. I got to watch Sarah. Sarah, my daughter, she was awesome. She had a double, 2 triples, and a home run a couple days ago.
Cool.
She went all the way to the fence, and I mean, the fence could get 300 feet.
Wow.
You know? Okay. All right. So here we are ready to go. All right. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. When we cut to the second commercial break, we asked this trivia question. Who was the first president to invite a team to the White House?
I'm going to say Richard Nixon.
You have to go back further than that.
Harry Truman?
You have to go back further than that.
Calvin Coolidge.
You have to go back further.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt?
No, but even before that. You ready for this?
Benjamin Harrison?
Andrew Johnson.
Wow. That was the guy that replaced Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
It was actually the first president to be impeached.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we have on the phone Dan Belluomini, who is USF's former basketball coach and current television basketball analyst. Before we let you go, Dan, I know you got a busy day. Bruce.
Well, I was just talking to Dan about. I think the thing, Dan, tell me if I'm wrong. The thing that keeps us all, especially guys like you who live and breathe basketball. You played it, you coached it. Now you're talking about it constantly. Is the fact that when you get to this tournament, it's really. We've talked about it before. It's really not only special and unique, but it's just so much fun. It really is.
Well, because of the model of the tournament, the 1 and out, it's a tremendous amount of fun. Everybody's got a bracket. Everybody fills it out. Nobody gets, some they get it right, some they get it perfect, and I don't know if anybody that got it perfect, so I doubt they have this year either. But that's what's great. So, but as I said earlier, we're basically down to some very good teams that are left in the tournament, and I think the best games are yet to come. Tomorrow's going to be exciting. There's big games coming up.
Yeah, before we let you go, got to get the prediction from you. Anybody that you think is going to be the favorite to win this whole thing?
Well, I think Kentucky is their tournament to lose. I think they got 8 or 9 pros on their team. I think they have a tremendous amount of talent. They're well coached, and I think there's a game I want to see. I'd like to see Kentucky play Arizona. I'd like to see that game. I think that would be a very, very high level game, and so maybe it will happen.
Do you think they'll do like a playoff type situation in the next few years?
I mean,
Do you think they might do a playoff situation in maybe when it gets to the Final Four or basically the last 2?
you get to the Final Four.
Yeah, like once they get to the Final Four or once they have the championship, you think they might go for like a 2 out of 3?
No.
No.
No,
Just keep it
I know that's not the model of the tournament. No,
Okay. All right. Dan Belluomini, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, Dan was. I remember when he was coaching. I was just a young pup, and And as I said, USF had some great teams in those days. They had Bill Cartwright and Winfred Boynes and Quentin Daly. So, he's been around basketball a long time. And the game has changed to a certain degree. But the great thing about the college game is that it just, I don't know, there's something about college sports in general. I know there's a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of money under the table. But, 95% of these kids are not going to even get a sniff at the pros. They're just into it for the love and also for the scholarship. But it's great to see it. I like it a lot. And if you have a fun, if you have a vested interest in a school where you went to school or your kid went to that school or your dad, it becomes that much more, exciting.
In fact, there was a Sports Illustrated article here. Some of it was what Dan had talked about. They're talking about fast fixes here. 5 rule changes that can help reverse the downward trend in scoring. Cut down on the contact, increase movement, and speed up the game. So one of the things that they specifically mentioned here was reduce the shot clock. Take it from 35 seconds to 30 or maybe even 24, which is what Dan was saying.
In the women's game, the college women, it's down to 30. But the men's is higher, so,
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. They don't. It's one thing if you're, maybe high school.
Yeah.
You need that. But
Sure.
when you get to the college level,
No, you don't need it. You don't need. Well, I hate to say it. In the old days, when you and I were, maybe before even you were, remember, when I was a kid, they didn't have a shot clock. I remember going to college, and I went to the school at the University of Denver, and we had a high-paced team one year that was scoring an average of 90 points a game. And we played this little college across town, and the only way they thought they could beat us was to slow the tempo down. So they went into the 4 corners and stalled. The final score was 38-27. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean
That's not college bad. That's not basketball. No.
Here's something else they said. Extend the arc under the basket. So it says a 3-foot arc was added in 2011 and 12 to help officials decide the block versus charge call. It says in the pros, the arc is 4 feet out. That's the NCAA, and our coach is saying we're not going to be the NBA. Okay, so they had to do it a little different.
Yeah, it's college basketball. They always try to be different. They always want to make sure that we're not like the NBA. And the NBA doesn't take that kind of look down their nose attitude at college because they know, hey, they come from. Well, that's where exactly. These guys, that's where they recruit.
It's like the IRS and Franchise Tax Board. Franchise Tax Board says, nope, California, we're going to be different than the feds.
There you go.
Okay, here's something else. He said, widen the lane. So it said increasing the width to 14 feet from 12 feet would push post players away from the basket and force them to learn to shoot with touch instead of just backing down and powering to the rim.
Interesting.
That was interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Drivers would also have more space, allowing players to better showcase their athleticism.
Yeah, the thing is, though, that I understand that philosophy, but I think when you start tinkering with the basics of the game, the shot clock is one thing, but when you start changing the size of the lane, I don't know if that's a good idea. It's like saying, well, we got to have a football field that's 120 yards long, like the Canadian League, because they score a lot more. Well, it may work out in Canada. I don't know if it works here. It's just my opinion.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, they also talked about here about moving back the 3-point line. It says the goal isn't to make the shot more difficult, it's to create more space. If the committee pushed the line from 20 feet to 22.2, which is where the FIBA has it, it would give players more room to operate and shorter than the NBA's distance of 23-foot 9-inch line. They also have here limit timeouts.
I like that. That's one thing that drives me up the wall about basketball is the incessant calling of timeouts late in the game, especially in the NBA. You're down by 4 points with 2 seconds to go, but no, you've got to call a timeout because there's a possibility we may hit a 3-pointer and get fouled and tie the game. Well, I understand that thinking, but come on, let's be realistic.
Well, that's one of the other articles here. It says someone had written in, it says the main problem with college basketball is the final 2 minutes of the games, which have become a series of endless stoppages due to timeouts, fouls, and referees bent over a table staring at computer screens.
It's that you don't see that in hockey, you don't see that in the NFL, you don't see that in baseball, but in basketball, for some reason, you see it. And I think it's incumbent upon the coaches to be a little bit more fan savvy and also TV savvy. I realize that, again, it's incumbent upon you to do everything you can to try to win a game, but some of these timeouts and fouls, why? You're up by 10 points and the other team fouls you, and it's just ridiculous.
Trading baskets.
Yeah, it's just trading free throws. That's not basketball.
Some fan also wrote in and said there are 2 reasons why scoring is down in college hoops. Players are now bigger and stronger and faster, so it's become harder to score against defenders. course, you could also say that on the offense, that they're more offensively strong. Plus, the players' basketball skills have diminished, according to this guy. Many of them spend hours in the gym getting muscle, but aren't working on the fundamentals.
Well, I have a hard time believing that because if you don't know the fundamentals in basketball, you just aren't going to make it. One thing that Dan pointed out, I thought was something that we need to bring up is you look at the average NBA roster today, and I'm not sure this is the exact number, but I would dare say that minimum of three players per team are foreign-born now. What other sport outside of hockey? What are the major sports? Football and baseball. Well, baseball you got a lot of Latinos, but basketball encompasses Africans, Asians, Europeans. I mean, to me, it's truly the international sport. And yeah, soccer may be more popular, but I think basketball has more wide appeal in terms of the number of countries that play it well.
Yeah, that's true. You don't see too many Africans playing baseball.
No, well, it's not a sport that's the only place they play baseball in Europe is, believe it or not, is Holland, and they play a little bit in Italy. They have leagues there, but and I believe in Spain too. But the rest of football is not played anywhere outside the United States and Canada, as far as I know.
Well, I bet in Africa, the reason it's expensive when you start talking about gloves and bats.
But it's very popular in Asia, though. It's very popular in Korea. It's very popular in Japan. It's very popular in China.
They're not third world countries. So
well, some of them are, but they've decided to invest in those. And it helps when you have an Ichiro that comes to the United States and becomes a superstar, or a Chan-Ho Park who's from Korea. Who it helps. That kind of boosts the image up, and it's going to give you a lot more incentive to improve your state programs.
Well, in Taiwan and Japan and South Korea, the baseball, the Little League.
Oh, it's huge. It is huge. Yeah.
These guys they do very well.
They do very well.
Yeah. In fact, I don't know if we mentioned about the allegations of cheating in the Little League World Series.
That's sad. I hear about that.
I still remember Danny Almonte.
Yeah.
Remember him?
Well, what bothers me is, I guess, was it Monet Davis's team that got disqualified because they. And the thing was,
no. It was kids from Chicago.
Kids from Chicago.
Yeah.
There have been a number. It was pointed out. There was an article written, I think it was recently in Sports Illustrated, about a number of past champions that recruited outside their area, but for some reason they had a red ass for these kids from Chicago. And I don't know if it was politics. I don't know if they didn't like the coach, but it was so hypocritical to me and unfair. And I, just from what the article stated, unless the article was just really sniffing up the wrong tree, and I think they covered their bases pretty well with their research. I was shocked. I thought, geez, Little League baseball, that's getting a little ridiculous.
Well, how do they do that in, let's say, Japan?
There's a good point. In a place like Japan, your top team doesn't necessarily come from one part of Japan. It's a conglomeration of players from all over. Whereas in the United States, they're regional.
Yeah. So they have a big advantage then.
Well, exactly. That's why they win a lot, and that's why they've had some great. Listen, they bring in some good players to the United States who play at the major league level, but not to the rate of which, if you looked at their Little League program and you thought, geez, they're going to, have guys all over the Major League Baseball. Yeah. Well, that's not exactly true. There has to have a few, but it's because they've concentrated everybody from one country into one team.
So I got an idea. Why don't we have two American teams?
Right.
One would be like, and I don't know how you pick the all-stars of, the United States, but you maybe get the top, let's say, 20 teams, and each coach gets to put one kid in, and they get to play basically twice, I guess, right?
Is it? Now, let me ask you this: isn't the format? I may be wrong. They have an international bracket, and then they have an American bracket. Yeah. The American teams play each other, and then they go to the championship game against the best team from the international bracket. Right. Is that how it works? Okay.
Yeah. So it could be from the Caribbean.
Yeah. But I think why not have an all-star team? Of course, that would involve a lot of politics. I guess you couldn't change that. But, if you really want to get the best of the best of the United States against the best of, say, Japan or China, take an all-star group from all those teams that have played in the tournament. I guess it wouldn't be fair, though, to those kids who were on the team that won the whole thing, would it?
Well, that, and then, gosh, I don't know. There's so many kids playing. How do you figure out?
Yeah, how do you figure out which ones deserve to be there? It would be so political.
That would be really hard.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to have to save some of this other stuff for next week, which will be kind of fun. But we're going to cut to our final commercial break here.
Okay.
And we're talking about Presidents in Baseball Part 2. Who was the first president of the United States to be invited to throw out a first baseball?
Oh, now that I do know.
Now, I thought
I
knew.
know that.
Okay, you know that one?
I know that one.
I thought I knew this one, and I was wrong.
Really?
Yep. First three emails with the correct. I'll let you answer.
Okay.
And I'll tell you if I thought that was the same
Okay.
guy. The first three emails with the correct answer.
It wasn't.
It wasn't. Yeah. Win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Check them out at www.lighthouseresortandmarina.com. We're talking baseball and presidents, part 2. Who was the first president of the United States to be invited to throw out a first ball? All right. You want to email Edward at sportsecon101.com the answer to that question. And don't touch that dial because we're going to be returning with some closing comments here on Sports Econ 101.
Hey, Dad, can I use the bathroom
Oh,
real quick?
yeah.
I have got to
You know
pee
what?
like
Let me give you my key because for some reason someone
purloined the other one. Huh?
purloined
I love that word, purloined.
It's,
Purloined letter. You know who wrote that, right?
purloined.
Edgar Allan Poe. The purloined letter.
Purloined letter? I haven't
I
heard
like
that
that one, yeah.
Okay. I gotta go up tomorrow to Lighthouse.
Today?
No, tomorrow. Tomorrow morning. I have to be there by
You're on camera right now.
noon. Okay, I have to be there by noon.
Okay.
So, Frontier's coming out to upgrade our service. I've got to deal with some stuff with Mark and Wendy. I've got to deal with some stuff with James on the website and some other stuff too.
Yeah, we got to get some sales going. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that.
Let me get my little pad
did
out
that
so
lady-
I can take more notes.
Did
here.
that lady call you?
I talked to her. You talking about the lady that you and I spoke with?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a long-term member, Edward. She lives over by the Cafco. She's already spoke to Linda about it. She just wants her friends to be close to her.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Anyway, okay, I'm dashing out, so I'm going to talk to you this afternoon.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right. Just have one quick closing
That's
comment.
right,
Where
yeah.
then we be done.
Go get some lunch, and then my daughter's got a play date with one of her buddies coming over, so I got to be Mr. Mom.
Oh yeah, Mr. Ron. There you go.
That's always fun.
Okay, here we go. Supposed to baby out. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. When we get to the third commercial break, we asked this trivia question about presidents in baseball. Who was the first president of the United States to be invited to throw out a first ball?
And it was none other than William Howard Taft.
That's what I thought.
No, he was.
You know what? That's what I thought.
Oh, wait a sec. You used the word invited. That means he didn't necessarily come and throw out the first ball.
You know
See, that's a trick question.
I'm sorry.
That's a trick question because Taft was the first that actually threw out the first ball. But I
yes.
believe Teddy Roosevelt was invited.
No, it was actually before him.
McKinley?
Grover Cleveland.
Grover
Yeah,
Cleveland,
so
who, by the way, married a woman 30 years his junior
Oh, yeah.
when she was 21 years old in the White House while he was president.
That's right. I remember.
Yeah,
the
and they came up with a song about it. Yum Yum is going to the White House because that was a nickname of Frances Folsom Cleveland, and she was quite a looker too.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
And then he took some time off, and he became president
Again, yeah, well, he had to take time off to take care of his young wife. Yeah, yeah.
So, so what happened was he was invited,
Right.
but he did not attend because he felt the American people would see him as wasting his time.
In those days, baseball was not considered, in a very high place of esteem.
Oh, that's sort of like a billiards or polo.
Yeah, it was considered. The people who were involved were not.
But it's funny because if you go way, way, way back, it was a gentleman's game.
Way back.
1850s.
Yeah, way back in the 1850s, and then it sort of was taken over by a rough bunch of characters, and then it got respectable again around the 1900s when the National American League
And
started
then it
playing
went
World
back
Series.
again for the 1919 Red Sox.
Well, that was because Charles Kaminsky was a cheap SOB who wouldn't pay his players.
That's it.
Yeah.
Get in old Mountain Land.
Kennesaw Mountain Landis.
Kennesaw Mountain.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, we're going to cut to our thoughts for the day here. A couple of quotes from Tyler Durden with Brad Pitt for the movie The Fight Club.
Oh, yeah.
The things you own end up owning you.
That's very true.
That's true.
Yeah.
And It's only after you've lost everything that you're free to do anything. Well said from a man who didn't even exist, if you remember the movie.
Kaiser Sosa?
No, Brad Pitt.
Oh, Brad Pitt. Okay, same. Fight Club. I can see Fight Club's one of your favorite movies.
Well, no, it was interesting.
It was an interesting movie.
It was
yeah.
interesting, but
Yeah.
I didn't like the way that the whole thing turned out. Okay.
Yeah.
Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective, giving away more free vacations for answering sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week. So long.